This is a quick tutorial on how to factorize, solve and sketch quadratic equations when the value of a is greater than 1. What do we mean by the value of a being greater than 1? Well, any quadratic equation can be represented by the equation you see on the board. Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And all that means is that there is some amount of x squareds, some amount of x's plus an integer value, and we make sure that it is equal to 0. So the case we're going to consider now is when a is 6, so I've got 6x squared. When b is 8, so I've got positive 8x. And when the value of c is minus 8. And again, that is equal to 0. Now, we have to ask ourselves a question at this point. What two numbers will multiply to give me the value of ac? So that is a times by c. Well, a times by c gives me 48 minus 48. But also, what same two numbers will add to give me the b value? Now, the b value in this case is 8. Now, to answer that question, if you can't see what values would answer those two questions, what I suggest is that what you do is you write down the factor pairs of 48. Don't worry about the minus sign for a moment, but just write down the factor pairs of 48. So we have 1 and 48, 2 and 24, we have 3 and 16, we have 4 and 12, and we've got 6 and 8. So they're all the factor pairs of 48. The only pair that either add or have a difference of 8 is 4 and 12. So I found the two numbers that will answer my two questions. It is 4 and 12. All we've got to consider now then is, well, 4 times 12 at the moment gives me positive 48. Which of those two numbers must be the negative to give me minus 48? Well, to find out which one's going to be negative, I look at the second sum. 4 plus 12 equals 8. Well, it doesn't equal 8 at the moment, does it? So the only way that we can make it equal to 8 is if the 4 becomes negative. Negative 4 plus 12 gives me 8. So the two 4's must be negative. Now, all I'm going to do is rewrite out my equation. So I had 6x squared, and this time rather than writing 8x, I'm going to separate 8x into its two parts. And the two parts I'm going to divide it into is minus 4x plus 12x, because those were the two numbers that satisfied my problem. I now continue just to keep writing out my equation, so I've got minus 8 equals 0. Now, to be able to factorize this equation, what we're going to do now is going to treat it in two separate parts. If we just divide it down in the middle there, we're just going to consider this left-hand side first of all. And what we're going to do is we're going to factorize this left-hand side. So what is the highest common factor of 6x squared minus 4x? Well, the highest common factor is 2x. Well, 2x times by what gives me 6x squared? That is 3x. And what times by 2x gives me minus 4x? Well, that's minus 2. Now, if I come to the right-hand side of the equation, I also want to factorize this. So I take out the highest common factor of 12x and minus 8. Well, that's going to be 4. 4 times by what gives me 12x? That is 3x. 4 times by what gives me minus 8? That's minus 2. Making sure, again, I write it is equal to 0. I can have confidence that I'm on the right track and I've done everything right so far, because if you've done it correctly, the two bracketed terms will be exactly the same. Now, what you'll notice is, because I have the two brackets on either side of my equation being exactly the same, they are now a common factor themselves. So if I take out my bracketed term as a common factor, 3x minus 2, my other bracket is made up of what I am left with. So that is 2x and positive 4. And hence I have factorised my quadratic equation when a is greater than 1. Now we need to solve the quadratic equation. Well, just like when we were solving this when the a value was 1, we can only have the equation equaling 0 if one or the other bracket has a total value of 0. So either 3x minus 2 is equal to 0, or 2x plus 4 equals 0. And so we need to find out what values of x would bring about that 0 value to the equation. Well, if we just go step by step, add 2 to both sides to this left-hand equation. So 3x is equal to 2, which means x must equal 2/3. I wouldn't worry about writing things in a fraction form, that's no problem at all. Again, for good examination technique, I'm going to box my answer. For the other bracket, the right-hand bracket, 2x plus 4 equals 0. Well, if I subtract 4 from both sides, I have 2x is equal to minus 4. Divide both sides by 2, x equals minus 2. So I've factorised and now solved my quadratic equation. All that's left for me to do now is to draw a little sketch. I've got some axes pre-prepared here in the bottom right-hand corner, and we now know where the quadratic crosses the x-axis. We've just seen that it crosses at minus 2, and it crosses at positive 2/3. Not got to measure anything, it's only a sketch. On the y-axis, we've just got to use the c value. Now our c value in this case is minus 8. So on our y-axis we write down minus 8. We now have our three positions of our quadratic equation, and we can now draw a fluent sketch of that equation.